the word tip is slang. It dates back to roughly around the 1600s. And it was used to give to somebody. It meant to tip somebody, to give them information or give them a gift or something. And as time went on, it started to develop backronyms, which means it wasn't an acronym that was created with a statement in mind. Like I grew up with it, meaning to ensure prompt service. It was actually something that the to ensure prompt service actually developed after the slang word tip became a thing. Now, tipping isn't new. I mean, the slang tip showed up in English language somewhere between the 1500s and the 1600s, but back in the medieval days, wealthy people and people with servants, if their servants provided exceptional service, they would give them extra money or extra gifts or extra privileges and such. So it's an old practice. Now, of course, when Trump got back into office, he removed all tax on tips. And I thought, because mandatory minimum wage increases happen, we've been hearing a lot about that, improving the wages. I believe it was Starbucks a year or two ago that went on strike because they wanted better wages and better working conditions and different things. And I thought anyway that when there was no tax on tips and that 100% of those tips that they took home would be enough, that this more and more tipping culture would kind of level off. But it hasn't. It's gotten worse to the point where businesses that don't have tipping practices or historically have not had tipping practices are now demanding it. They're incorporating it into the credit card screens. There are brazen examples of theft of clerks at different retail establishments that are clicking the tip button and giving themselves tips without your knowledge or consent. That is theft of funds. It's getting out of hand. And I get people in retail, they have the worst job on the planet. A sewer cleaner has a better job. A garbage truck man has a better job than anybody that works in retail. I get that your wages are shitty, your benefits are shitty, your working conditions are shitty, your hours are shitty. I get it. And I do tip very well. We're very generous tippers because we understand, we get it. However, that does not give employees the right, the authority to just take your funds because they personally feel they've earned it, even if they're a crappy person and a crappy server. And now businesses are jumping up there and they're demanding it of their customers because they don't want to pay a decent living wage. So now they're forcing the public to pick up the bill for them. I think it's just become so shameful, the greed of what has transpired, the level of greed, the level of theft. There's just videos everywhere showing receipts where they have the 18, 10, 20, 30% tip ratios, and you can pick one. Except that routinely, those dollar amounts for those tips are actually inaccurate by several dollars. In one case, a math savvy man was looking at the percentage that was listed at the bottom of his receipt, and it was off by $5. their alleged percentage of 18% of his bill for a tip, that 18% was off by $4.96, meaning they had increased it. So now they're banking on you being disinterested, not paying attention, and not being math savvy, and they're just grifting and gouging. And now we're being obligated, we're being forced to tip everybody every time you step into a store, a restaurant, any kind of a venue. They've got tip jars everywhere. They've got tips incorporated into their card machines. And I think it's just really shameless. I feel terrible for people that struggle financially. I've struggled financially. We're paycheck people. There was a time in my life when I was actually homeless. I lived in a car that didn't even have a working back door on the back driver's side. It was being held by the other door across the back seat to keep it closed with a rope. There were many days in my life where I had saltine crackers and ketchup. That was what we had. I am grateful for everything that we have. We're still paycheck people, but we're making it. And I get where people are just fed up. They're working a lot of hours at a really bad job, on their feet in the heat, with cruel, ungrateful, disgusting customers. And they're making shit for wages, and they have to work 2 and 3 of these jobs just to make ends meet. And if you work too many jobs and make too much money, then the counties and the states won't help you with SNAP and WIC and HUD and things that you could really use a boost and support from. So I get it. I get why socialism is rising in America. We have boundless, countless, millions upon millions upon millions of crappy retail positions available all over the United States. And they need to be filled. These jobs need to be filled because of the demand, but the wages and the working conditions are so shoddy, and they can't get decent bennies, that people are fed up. They're tired, they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, they're overworked, worked to death. And so every little bit of scratch they can get tax-free that can go into their pockets, they're going to fight for. And some people are fighting for it by being dishonest. Some corporations, some retailers are being dishonest by putting incorrect numbers in those percentages and banking on your disinterest or stupidity. By retail employees clicking buttons on that machine and getting themselves tips they never earned, and banking that you're not going to check your bank statement or you're going to check your receipt. Pay cash when you can. Do tap and pay every single opportunity you get, and get a receipt for every single purchase. And look it over. It's important because we're losing billions of dollars to this retail theft. And there's many, many, many levels of retail theft. It's just ridiculous. It needs to stop. We need to do something about it. And it's just like grocery shopping. It's buyer beware. We are responsible for our money. We're responsible for the food that we purchase with our money and the services that we purchase with it. So we have to be more savvy. We have to be paying more attention. But tipping culture is really getting out of hand. And some folks feel that, well, they're victims of a bad system, and that's why capitalism is bad. That's why socialism is rising here, because of all of these crappy jobs. And I get it. Forced wage increases, increasing the minimum wage and forcing that, is going to force businesses into financial predicaments where they might have to close or they might have to let people go. I get that. I really do. I know it's a vicious cycle. But you business owners out there and business managers and people of authority in retail, it's not our job to foot the bill for you. If you give exceptional service, you get an exceptional tip. We tip all the time and we over tip all the time. Over tip all the time. Even if the service is shitty, we'll give them something. But I think that this greed that has developed, this brazen theft of our money, is taking freedoms away from us. And when they're off the clock and they're a consumer, they could very well be victimized as well. So we're just causing this vicious cycle of theft and fraud and victimization through tipping. And what can we do about it? Well, just pay attention to the receipts. Get a receipt. Do a quick scan of that receipt. Be sure that you control the tipping. If you see that you want to give 18%, but you see that they've added $4 or $5 to that 18%, you can tell them, here's my tip for my waitress. This is 18%. What you have there is incorrect. Show them. Call these people out. If we call them out, then they're going to know that people are paying attention and they're just going to have to stop the practices. Retail workers are not victims. It might be the only place that they can get to work. Maybe they have a criminal record, a deficit somewhere in their life that's preventing them from getting a better paying job or moving up. Or they're young people just starting out. And you're going to get those crappy jobs with the crappy bennies and the crappy hours and whatnot until you work your way up to being, a manager or supervisor or, work the day shift or, whatever you got going on. So, retail workers, we see you, we know that you are committing theft and fraud. And retail owners, we see you gouging tips from your servers and your cooks. We know you are rigging your credit card machines. We know. We're watching you now. Let's see if we can get this under control again because, the Trump administration did a solid to people with tips by taking taxes out of those tips so people would be less likely to lie, not, withhold from the government. That's got to be a horrible feeling when you feel like you're forced to withhold from the government because you work really hard for your dollar and they're doing nothing for your dollar. So we need to get back to the whole reason that tipping exists. And even though it's a backronym and not an acronym, to ensure prompt service or proper service, to me, that's perfectly fine. If you want a decent tip, do a decent job. And until next time, do good and be good.